You are entering another dimension, a dimension of dumbos, of ding-dongs, a dimension of the mindless. You're moving into a land of arguments without substance. You've just crossed over into the bad take zone.
Hello, I'm Identity Politics, and today I'd like to talk to you about thought slime. Identity politics, or IDpol, or IDpol, is a derogatory term for intersectional politics. Don't tell me it isn't, because it fucking is, you know it. Which is the idea that there exist different axes. The idea that there exist different vectors of oppression, and that those vectors of oppression enforce, interact, and compound one another. The term is normally used by a bunch of right-wing ding-dongs, but it's being increasingly adopted by a small pool of self-described leftists, usually from LeftyPol, leftist shitposting community on 8chan. I'm just gonna go ahead and clear my cache. Hey, now might be a good time to mention that there's gonna be some slurs in this video. No hard feelings if that makes you want to check out. I get it. But it's difficult to talk about this without talking about slurs and using examples, because the people that I'm criticizing use a lot of slurs. Like a lot. A lot. Now, I get why right-wingers don't like identity politics. That's entirely consistent with the fundamental core of their beliefs, which is, of course, fuck everyone who's even slightly different than me. They don't like marginalized groups overcoming institutionalized or socialized oppression because it challenges the extant power dynamics that they seek to uphold. That makes perfect sense to me, I get it. I mean, I hate it, but I get it. What doesn't make sense to nobody know-how is leftist opposition to identity politics. Now, I understand the argument. Critics of IDpol say it diverts energy from class consciousness and is used by the liberal hegemony to prevent the rise of popular socialist movements by policing speech and setting people against one another with an in-group, out-group mentality. They argue that instead of being defined by labels, the entire working class should stand together as one. Hey, that sounds pretty good, until you consider that the method they want to use to accomplish this is saying a lot of slurs when they think it's funny, and ignoring or mocking anyone who asks them to change their bigoted behaviors even slightly. Some go so far as to suggest that class conflict is the only meaningful form of oppression, and any political action that is not explicitly centered around class is a direct attempt to sow class disunity. This belief is called class reductionism, and it's horseshit, because intersectionality, which I must reiterate, is actually what these people are talking about when they talk about IDpol, as much as they might want to claim otherwise, isn't divisive, it's inclusive. It's inclusive by design. It's a theory that allows seemingly disparate liberatory struggles to understand their shared experience and the value of working together against all forms of oppression, not just those which affect them personally. To suggest that these liberatory struggles can be reduced to class conflict, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or any other axis of oppression that my brain is too privileged to understand, that's what's divisive. It asks people to accept that their liberation is, at best, a side benefit to yours, or at worst, delusional bourgeois decadence. And this is not some theoretical distinction. The toxic belief of class reductionism manifests itself in lots of ways that alienate a lot of potential allies. Do you know how many comments I see in my videos from other self-described leftists using words like autistic or aspie or autist as insults? How do you think that makes our autistic comrades feel? Do you think it inspires them to work with you to build the larger leftist movement? Or does it make them think that when push comes to shove, you'll turn your back on them? I'm not autistic, and I think it makes you sound like a complete asshole. I don't want to work with you. I don't want to be on the same side of an argument with you. I can't imagine how betrayed actually autistic people must feel when they hear something like that. But it's useless to point it out because class reductionists can't conceive of the idea that their privilege blinds them to legitimate complaints about their behavior and words. They'll exhaust you with 1,000 whataboutisms and absurd hypothetical extrapolations of what you said.
Well, if we're not allowed to say the word retarded because it hurts people's feelings, then what happens when we can't say the word rich anymore, or we can't say the word bourgeois anymore, or we can't say the word communism anymore because that hurts people's feelings? Do you ever think about that, class cuck?
but they'll never confront the material effect of the real-world things they say and do. This isn't a matter of just hurt feelings. That's just where it starts, because feelings are the animus of political action. And deliberately disregarding people's feelings means they just fucking bounce. They don't stick around to listen to your argument about class, they leave, because you're being an asshole. When I look at my analytics, which I do every day because I'm a neurotic person, I see that my viewership is overwhelmingly male. Now, maybe that's some personal fault of mine, and if it is, that's something I'll have to deal with, please let me know. But I don't think it is, because I see the exact same ratio played out in all sorts of radical spaces. And I think I know why. Because politics is a hostile place for women. Doubly so for radical politics, where we tend to get a little heated about our opinions. And if you don't make it a priority to center women and women's issues in your movement, it's not just going to happen on its own. And do you know what happens when movements don't center women? Women conclude, oh, I guess these wieners don't actually give a shit about me, and they don't participate in our movement. And boom, you've cut yourself off from half of the total population, effectively making it twice as difficult to gather support. Way to go, very practical. I'm sure capital is quaking in its boots. Because you wouldn't want to be divisive, and that doesn't just go for women either. Do you think queer people are going to stick around when you keep tossing around the word faggot so casually? Do you think defending speech that legitimately gets trans people killed is going to make them want to participate in your movement? I gotta tell you, I spend a lot of time in anarchist spaces, and if we lose the support of trans women, we're fucked. And you know who don't have this problem? Liberals. Despite the obvious fact that their policies are worse for oppressed people than the solutions proposed by leftists, they managed to attract a lot more of those people by creating a big tent platform that just pays lip service to anti-oppression politics. We actually have anti-oppression politics. Imagine what we could do with that sort of broad support. And I think that's why a lot of ding-dongs have knee-jerk reactions.
Emphasis on the jerk.
That IDpol is liberal in nature. Because, I mean, it can be. Liberals are good at using it, but it can be anything. It can be conservative, it can be monarchist, it can be for people who like spaghetti, it can be for people who like hot dogs. But it's a vital and inalienable component of leftist politics. Want to know why? Because class is an identity. Class is a vector of oppression. Class analysis is a form of IDpol. Which is not to say that class is the root of all other forms of oppression, as class reductionists would have you believe. I don't think there's any good reason to believe that in some future classless society, other forms of oppression will wither away on their own without us doing anything about them preemptively. Maybe you think that oppression won't be enforceable without class, but given that these power relations seem to play out according to the same pattern within classes, I'd say that's maybe wishful thinking on your part. Or maybe you're a total asshole, and you think that oppression wouldn't matter. Well, okay, good luck getting people to fight for your liberation if you think theirs is irrelevant. Bottom line, if you call yourself a leftist of any kind and you're against IDpol, you're probably a hypocrite. But if you call yourself an anarchist in particular and you're against IDpol, you are a hypocrite. No qualifier necessary. You can't dismantle oppressive hierarchies if you're not willing to even confront them. Actually, no, that's too generous to you. You're not actually just refusing to confront them, you're actively contributing to them. You're drowning out legitimate complaints and issues because you've decided that you know better than the people you're going to uplift. You're placing yourself at the top of a social hierarchy. You're making people's struggles seem frivolous, and that actually hurts people and gets people killed. And frankly, if you don't give enough of a shit about oppressed people to make tiny concessions, like not calling them slurs designed by their oppressors to dehumanize them, or to consider that maybe other people have experienced forms of oppression that they understand better than you do, then you don't actually care about equality. And that means you're not really on the left. You're just a confused right-winger, cosplaying as a leftist. And that's fine. Cosplay is fun. But please try to do it a little more convincingly, because you're making us look bad. Hey Charlie, help me say thank you to all my patrons this March. Help me out, Charlie. Special thanks to Ryan William Cox, J. Bugs III, Michael Hollenback, Nicole the Anarcha Duck, Matthew, and Chorham. And a double extra special thank you goes out to Queen Maxine and Chuds Mackenzie. If you liked hearing those names and seeing those cartoons, and you wanted you to be in those, then go to patreon.com and give me some of your hard-earned money so that I can waste it. And if you like this video, why not give it a like and subscribe to my channel? It's called Thought Slime. This is my cat, Charlie. Say hello, Charlie. Say hello, Charlie. Come on, bud. Come on. Say hello.